Today on Tricrow Studios, we do a high gain amp shootout between the Peavey 6505 Plus and the very shiny, using Kettner, Triamp Mark II. Now, I would like to reiterate here that this is a high gain amp shootout. That's why it's titled so. So you're not going to hear any cleans, you're not going to hear any breakup. It's just high gain geared towards metal. I'd also like to note that I'm using an Ibanez TS9 in a boost setting for both amps. You don't have to do that. However, when I was A-Bing the recording, just had a little more energy with the TS9. But I do have two sound samples for you today. The first of which is a more balanced EQ type setting in drop B. Second of which is a more scoop type setting in drop C. Now the Triamp here, I am using clearly amp 3, and I'm also using amp A. Alright, so there you go. There are the two sound samples for the high gain amp shootout between the Peavey 6505 Plus and the little bit shiny, little bit white over here, Hughes and Kettner Triamp Mark II. Now, two very important things here before you ask. The 6505 Plus, this is the Made in USA version. After that, they switched everything over to China. I think all the components are all the same. It's just made in China rather than made in USA. So no real differences. And for those of you who want to ask why I'm using the Mark II Triamp rather than the Mark III, I don't own the Mark III. All the videos that I make here, I own the gear that I'm making the videos with. So if I don't own it, I don't make videos with it. But it is at this point in the video where I kind of like to go over what I've gained from doing a shootout like this. Now, I did decide to use, so I'm using Amp 3, that's the more high gain amp, and I did use the Amp A for Amp 3, if that makes sense to you, rather than Amp B. Amp B definitely has a lot more low end to it. I believe that's the one that's modeled after like a more USA, I guess you would say, type of an amp. But there's a lot more focus and concentration on the low end and the high end, whereas Amp A is just a little more consistent across the board, and it kind of paired really well in comparison to the 6505 Plus, where it had a lot, some really good focus on the mid-range, so that low-end mid-range kind of worked there. But I did think that I would hear some almost similarities here, just because of the way that the EQ works on the Hughes and Kettner here. I do find that it is a little bit of an odd mid-hump when you're going from a whole bunch of other amps to this one. So you really have to pay attention to how you're dialing in things. But with the mid-range on the more balanced EQ, I did have the mid sitting at about 2 o'clock to get a balanced sound. Of course, you had it at 2 o'clock. And the high end there, even though right now it's sitting at 3 just to help it get into that more scoop, because it did the scoop 1 second, I did have that also sitting at around 2 o'clock. So I did find that I would hear that Peavey mid, I guess you would say, from the 6505 Plus, so that really nice low end, low mid focus, and that grunt and growl. And then I figured I would hear just a tiny bit more of the upper mids and low end from the Triamp. Even though like the 6505 Plus, that's got some pretty famous low end, I do find that the Triamp, you have to be careful with that one as well, because it can kind of overtake things just in direct comparison to it. So with a lot of things, you kind of have to be careful with how you're dialing things in, but there's just a whole bunch of different tones that you can get out of it, I guess you could say. And of course, I do have to address the boosting with the TS9, because I mean, you can definitely do that with the Triamp. A lot of people do to get that high gain sound. It's just a little more earlier saturation. But the 6505 Plus, I find that lately, like I've been trying it a little more with the 6505 Plus, to which at that point it's nicer because when you're boosting, you can dial down that gain to kind of match it to if it wasn't boosted for that specific high gain sound, and you can actually increase the gain a tiny bit more without it becoming like a woofing type bass sound. I sound like an idiot. But bottom line, I've just been enjoying it. And again, when I do these shootouts, I always start out by recording with a boost and without a boost. And then I kind of go from there to see which one's kind of suiting what I'm playing. And of course, we are talking about a 6505 Plus. It's a Peavey product. So if you are looking to purchase a Peavey on the used market, although I haven't had this happen with this 6505 Plus yet, however, with 4 other Peavey amps I have, make sure you do yourself a favor and get a can of contact cleaner and set aside about a half hour of your time with some screwdrivers because the potentiometers and the contacts and the potentiometers for Peavey amps, they tend to get dirtier faster than other amps. So what happens when that does occur is that you can get those crackly pots. So when you're moving things around, you hear and what can happen if it's on the volume or the gain, it can actually make it seem like the amp is losing power, or it can cut out completely. I did have that issue with a JSX where I was too lazy to actually fix it, so I didn't use it basically for a year. It is an easy fix. Like I said, it takes about a half hour. All you do is you pull the chassis out and you spray that contact cleaner inside the potentiometers and work them in, and that cleans everything up, and then it's basically good for like a year and a half to 2 years, maybe a little longer. So it's not that big of a deal, but it is something to take into consideration if you're purchasing a Peavey on the used market. But that is all I do have to say. I consider myself very lucky to own both of these amps, and I think they're excellent choices for high gain. The Triamp, that's basically 6 amps in one. And it has a whole bunch of tubes, and it's very heavy. So, yeah, very lucky, very fortunate to own both of those amps, and of course, any and all of the gear that I do own. Anyway, that's, again, all I do want to say. Thanks for watching.